Good afternoon. Hi there. How are you? Welcome into Red Pill 101, episode 26. We're going to be talking about the big sex strike. My name is Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm joined by the one, the only, the rational male, Mr. Rollo Tomasi, the godfather of the manosphere. Rollo, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Back in the studio again after a week in Orlando, with you, no less.
We did a lot there.
We've
multiple conversations, multiple podcasts, everything.
We have been very busy.
Any word, real quick? Any word on when the Red Man Group podcasts that we did down there are going to be back up on video?
I don't know. I know that they're in post-production right now. Okay. When we do those big panel shows and we do them at a convention,
right.
It takes a little more production than just throwing it out there on YouTube. So I would expect they would be within the week. I think I'll have to ask Anthony exactly what his schedule is for that. But
let's get to this.
A week.
Yeah, let's get to this sex strike story. By the way, I will not be participating. I'm out. This was actually started or generated by a tweet. I'm sorry.
A tweet too.
By Allyssa Milano. Okay, and it's tied in with some abortion legislation down in Georgia. Are you able to pull that actually up on the screen?
Yeah, I can. Give me 1 second here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Explain
it while I pull this up. Yeah.
Well, she doesn't like the legislation, and she feels that it somehow hurts women's control over their own bodies, and they claim they want full control over their reproductive health or rights.
There we go.
Yeah, I need to scroll. You're gonna have to read it on your end. Okay, so it says our reproductive rights are being erased until women have legal control over their own bodies. We just cannot risk pregnancy. Join me by not having sex until we get our bodily autonomy back. I'm calling for a sex strike. Pass it on. Okay. So a couple things. First of all, this whole premise that until we have legal control over our own bodies, what control don't they have right now? This is what we were talking about Friday in the program. It goes back to this promise that was made during the start of the sexual revolution back in the 60s, early 70s. Where we were told if women had access to a full range of reproductive, health, that we wouldn't have any more children born out of wedlock. We wouldn't have any more abortions. Okay, so you compare and contrast that with the reality that is today. 43% of newborns are born out of wedlock. There's no longer a stigma associated with that. They have single moms. Almost 60 million abortions in this country. The exact opposite of what they claimed they wanted, and now it still isn't enough.
Right. I think it's interesting. It's because it's reproductive rights. Now we've made this a right rather than like sort of a privilege.
Right.
I mean, is it a right? Is it not a right? I'm not even sure that's. Is that in the Bill of Rights? I mean, is that even constitutional? I know there's Roe versus Wade, but
stuff like that. They always claim it's in the 14th Amendment, right? Because that's where everything's getting, sort of secret.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what I thought was interesting. I mean, how old is she? She's like 48 years old.
40. Well, yeah, she. I want to be fair to her. 46. So she is
46. Okay.
She's the wall is just minutes away.
Well, it's interesting how a lot of Hollywood women, once they get past, Hollywood women hit the wall a lot quicker than most women do because they become unmarketable after a while. So once a woman gets past like 30, 32, somewhere around there, then she sort of drops off. I would not be surprised if some like Scarlett Johansson was part of this movement at some point, because I know she cut her hair real short and she decided to go all butch, and you got like Emma Watson and all these other women that after they get to a certain point, that's when they decide that they want to become feminists and they want to chop their hair short and they want to be, in some way activists. And of course, that's where Allyssa Milano is right here. She used to be a sex pot, right? I mean, everybody wanted to get with Allyssa Milano.
Well, she was also a child star, back in the day. So
so now she's an advocate for this.
She's married, okay? So the only person that's really going to be harmed by her sex strike is her husband, who's probably not getting any right now anyways. Last time I checked, at 46, 47, whatever she is, there wasn't exactly a line knocking at her door. And the last person I saw in that line was Harvey Weinstein, a fat, obnoxious, pig who likes to jerk off in front of women. So it's not like this is going to have zero impact on any of us.
Oh yeah, of course. Is she married?
Oh, she is married. Yeah,
she is married. So what I find interesting, I'm sorry, probably overmodulating here. What's interesting to me is like she's saying, join me by not having sex until we get bodily autonomy back. Now, what I'm wondering here is she expecting this sex strike to be something like she's just going to enforce it on all men, or just like the men who would vote for Trump, or the men who would be in any way reinforcing? I think we all need to fill in the blanks here a little bit.
It sounds like all women are supposed to join together until they've got full, autonomy over their own bodies.
Right. Well, I think, and this is in response to the abortion law in Georgia, right? And there, I should also fill in the rest of this blank here too. I know that J.J. Abrams and I forget the other guy, like Key and Peele. I forget maybe it was Peele. I'm not sure. One of those guys, who's the director. They said that they're going to donate all of their salaries for the next 2 or 3 months or something like that to get this thing overturned in.
Good luck with that.
Georgia. Yeah, good luck with that. But I think it's interesting that this should be a battle for these guys in the gender war. And that's really what this is. This is just another flare up in the gender war. And I a lot of the stuff that we're seeing going on right now, ever since January all the way up to here we are in May, this is one more instance of the gender war that I was talking about back in October at the convention in my State of the Manosphere address. Why would it be so important for these guys to want to do something like that? Well, they've got to virtue signal. That's really what this is right here for Allyssa Milano. It's drumming up more support for whoever it is that's going to challenge Trump coming up here in the next thing. So there's a political element to this as well. So I wanted to make sure that we're clear about why she's doing this.
A little side note though, earlier in the week, the big story was Brian Sims. Brian Sims is an openly gay, homosexual Republican state representative in Philadelphia. He's the guy that went after the grandmother who was peacefully, prayerfully protesting across the street. He's also the guy that tried to dox 3 teenage girls. It's like, dude, you're gay. Why would you even care about women getting pregnant? You're not even attracted to them. They're not in your wheelhouse. But this is all that virtue signaling, like you said, for the big gender confrontation. It's clear what side he's on, in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that going forward, you're going to see a lot more stuff like this. This is low hanging fruit. This is really low hanging fruit. So they see something like this that is a definite battle that they can fight. So they're going to drum up as much support for this as possible. So she wants to start a sex strike hashtag here. Now, of course, everybody who's piling on, everyone jumped on this almost immediately. There's people who are like the pro, the pro-abortion versus pro-life versus okay. So that's the classic attack, or that's the classic battle right there. But you have to see the bigger war, which is the gender war right here. So there's a political side of this that I wanted to make sure that that's clear, because what I'm going to talk about next here is the difference between validational sex and transactional sex, and that's really what she is confirming here by this being in any way a reflexive response for women. Okay, fine, we're not going to have sex with you then.
That was one of our most popular Red Pill 101s when we talked about the difference. We spent a full program on that before.
Yeah. And I'm looking here in the chat. They're saying, Milano is inadvertently helping the spirit of the Georgia abortion bill. Yes, she is, because what she's doing is she is confirming everything that I wrote about and I put this in the description. I've got a post called transactional versus validational sex. And all this says is that this is the type of women who think that this is some way a way to fight back against, the Trumpers or that mindset. They see this as a way to at least engage in some sort of combat. But the first thing they do is they confirm for themselves that sex is a transactional thing for them. So,
by the way, we know exactly what her husband's getting at home every other Saturday. when she does the starfish for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, and of course, you know, join me by not having sex. So is it that you just don't want to have sex, period, as in some sort of, you know, mock protest, or is it that you won't have sex with your husband because he supports the abortion bill in Georgia, which I don't think is, I wouldn't expect that, but like she's saying join me. So it's like all women, because we all have to be on the same page. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. This is an appeal to the sisterhood. And we've talked about, I've talked about the sisterhood uber alles in many a case. So that's what this is. It's an appeal to the sisterhood, saying like, you know, even if you're a conservative, you should feel like, you know, you should stop having sex in protest until this horrible law gets overturned.
By the way, this is not a new idea. This goes back to Greek mythology. In fact, I think you tweeted about that.
Lysistrata.
Tell the story real quick.
Okay, Lysistrata is it's actually a Greek play, and in it is, and I'll just give you the really brief one. It's I believe it's the Greek women. All decided that they were sick of the wars that their husbands and their, you know, lovers or whatever were off fighting, and so they wanted a voice in politics. So in order to affect some sort of political power, they stopped having sex with their husbands and the guys who were always off, and they were trying to broker a peace, because and the only way they could do that was by holding out, like withholding sex. And you know, it's a comedy, really, is what it is. But it was it was meant to teach it. It was meant to teach a lesson that, you know, women have, the only real agency women have is their sexuality. And what I think is interesting here is this element, the mindset that Allyssa Milano is a part of. It will get very, very upset if I say, well, women treat themselves as sexual commodities. I've gotten in trouble for saying that all the time, like saying that, well, women just see themselves as a series of wholes, or that they can sell. Or the people, you know, I get into Twitter battles with feminists who say, what do you mean women are advertising their sexuality on Instagram? They don't understand that. They think that that's just, you know, really Instagram models and Snapchat models and all that is just a low grade version of prostitution. And that's really what she's, and a lot of the people who are criticizing her are saying the same thing. So I don't think this is any shock, but she's essentially saying that women should be prostitutes, because the only reason a woman would have sex is as a form of agency. And that's what she's saying right here. And that's what Lysistrata was. It was the only agency that a woman has is her sexuality.
It's only leverage,
and
right?
I've said, only leverage. And I've said this from day one. I mean, this is a red pill fundamental, is that women understand that their only real agency with men is their sexuality. And so women just fly off the handle and say, well, oh my God, you think that women are sex objects, or you objectify women sexually. It's like, women objectify themselves sexually. And here you have a really glaring example of that, you know, in order to you know, prove a point, or to get some sort of I mean, shit, she's asking me to, you know, say, pass it on, everybody, let's all get together and hold out on having sex, because really most guys never enjoy validational sex anyways. They're only getting transactional sex as it is. And I think that's, I wanted to move in, because I don't think we've ever talked about the difference between validational sex and transactional sex. At least I don't think we've dedicated a show to it.
No, we did one of the red pill episodes. Yeah. In fact, it was very popular, because afterwards, a number of guys reached out to me, and I think to you too, asking, well, what's this validational like? Well, if you've had it, you don't need to ask. You know what it is. It's the best. It's the hottest. Once you've had it, you don't want anything else. But the transactional is, look, you brought this up, I think, on my local program before. For guys out there who go, oh, that's not true, right? If you're married or if you're in a long-term relationship, try this little test just for giggles and laughs. All of a sudden, just out of the blue, stop having sex with your wife or your girlfriend for about 3 weeks. You want to see them going into a full-scale panic, because they're going to go, wait a minute. What's going on? Is there something wrong? Do we need to talk? Are you mad at me? Kind of stuff, because they realize that is their currency, sex. And if you don't want it, well, how the hell am I going to buy anything?
Right. And that's I've said this in preventive medicine, that when women hit that sexual market value peak, right around 23 years old, that is the age at which they want to get back to for the rest of their lives. The joke is this: they call it forever 21, not forever 41. And the reason for that is because women they understand in the back of their head that their only agency with men is their sexuality. And I'm not saying women are worthless without their sex. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the agency that women have with men is always going to be based on their fertility. That's the first thing. Now, once you get past that, maybe there's value added. And I think that this will probably be my speech when we do the 22 convention in 2020, which is coming up, where we're still kind of in the brainstorming stages of that right now.
For women only.
For women only, but it's going to be a version of the 21 convention, which is by men for women. And it will only be male speakers, and it will be open to women who want to understand what the red pill is about and what the manosphere is really about, and how they can become better women. According to
Anthony's already got women that have pre-registered.
Yeah, and we're already working on that. So I think if I'm considering this, like, well, he asked me to do it, and I told him yes, and I'm still wondering, like, well, what would I say? I think really my main thrust of that talk will be about adding value, because right now women understand that their only agency is sex. We see that in so many different forms. Right here's an example with Allyssa Milano. But when we look at women who are in their sexual market value peak years, those are the women who are making the most money on Instagram and on Snapchat and in porn and really in anything where they are on display. Younger, hotter, tighter is always going to be better than older, looser or whatever.
when I gave my talk at the Patriarch convention, I brought up the fact, I said, if you're a guy and you're going to marry somebody or be in a long-term relationship based solely on appearance and sexual performance, I got news for you. It's got a limited shelf life. Remember, I read that response I got from a lady on all the different things that she brought to a relationship. That's what you're talking about, the value added things.
Yeah, there's more to it.
There has to be something beyond
that. And then I've said this as well, is that feminism teaches, well, actually, feminism or the feminine imperative, however you want to go about it, our feminization, our feminine primary education and conditioning from the time we're 5 years old teaches girls that they should never do anything for the express pleasure of a man. Because if you do that, it goes against the strong independent woman narrative. You can't be a strong independent woman if you're doing something for a man. And so consequently, the only focus is on themselves. And that's an easy sell, because most women all women are solipsistic, but most women are really self-centered and self-focused. And rightfully, I'm not criticizing that, because that's an evolutionary adaptation. That's an evolutionary part or an innate part of women's natures. They have to be self-focused because they're interested in survival and the survival of their offspring. Talked about that before. I'm not going to cover that right now. So what they do is they end up not doing anything for men and not developing themselves in any other capacity than what is absolutely necessary. What is absolutely necessary? Sexuality. Presenting themselves as a sexual availability, keeping themselves on the market even when they're off the market, and in various ways, to greater or lesser degrees. So I'm not saying that all women are just, they're just with a guy until they can find Mr. Hot Guy right afterwards. I'm just saying that in various, by orders of degree, women put themselves on display and advertise their sexuality because they know that is a means to power for women. That's what, this is exactly, it's like a textbook example. The sex strike is a textbook example of what I've been saying for 12 years now. And so I just think that, when you see stuff like this, it's a confirmation of this transactional nature of sex, because what happens is, when you and I have had this conversation before, when an incel goes nuts and he ends up running over or targeting women, And, before, maybe it's mass killing, whatever. Maybe it's just the guy is just an incel and he's posting kind of, inflammatory stuff on there. That guy understands the transactional nature of sex. He is locked out of it. Now he could go, there's no such thing as an incel. The guy could go and get laid if he wants to, but there's something else there. He still wants that desire. He still wants some sort of, affirmation that comes from a woman that would want him. It's not that, he couldn't probably come up with $100 and, come out here to Nevada and have sex, but he doesn't want to do that because there's a desire part of it. And that's the desire dynamic that I talk about quite a bit. But this is just showing you the transactional nature of sex and how women's reflexive response when they want something, when they need to enact a form of power over women.
When she wants a new car, when she wants, I don't know, a dog, she wants a new house, you're going to get some of the best sex ever. Why? Because she wants it. She's going to put on a show for you. Yeah, and that tells you, that is not genuine desire. That is her actually beating you in the negotiating process. I had I think I told you this before, and it's not just one. I've had several politicians who've come on, they do the self-deprecating humor. I married way above my level. Oh, I'm a lucky guy, all that kind of stuff. The one guy that just drove me nuts, he was running for Congress. He talked about, well, I was doing my honey-do list, and if you do those 10 things on Saturday with any luck, you're going to get that 10 minutes of, starfish that you've been living for all week long. To me, and I call it doggy treats. There is nothing more, just a slap in the face for guys. You've been a good little boy. Here's your little doggy treat. Your little doggy treat. Sex as a reward. That's insane. And so many guys out there. That's all they know. That's all they've ever had.
Yeah. That's the thing is this, that's why stuff like this seems logical to guys. They think, oh man, yeah, well, yeah, we're with you, sister. And they see this as an opportunity, really. Like if I get on board and I virtue signal and say, I'm really for abortion rights, they see that as sort of a form of game for themselves.
Yeah, they're white knights. They get their little badge too. Right?
Yeah, well, and that's the sneaky guy sexual strategy, which is if I just identify with women and identify with the feminine, then I'm going to get sex from a woman. And all that is really just a confirmation of the transactional nature of sex right there. So there's a validational side of sex and there's a transactional side. And most guys only ever experience the transactional side. They never really experience a validational side because women reserve that what they refer to themselves as enthusiastic consent. So they reserve that enthusiasm for more alpha men, the guys that they want to have sex with, the guys that the hot guy in the foam cannon party, as I like to say, the guy that is the more alpha guy that she wants to reproduce with, as opposed to the guy who is just transactional, is transactionally there. He's the good father, or he's the guy that it's cads versus dads. It's really what this is. And so most guys will jump on board with this. And I've seen several guys, I don't know the dudes really, I don't know if we would really call them celebrities, but I've seen some celebrities trying to back this up as well. And pretty much saying that if you disagree with her, you agree with rape. They're trying to I forget the guy who said that, but they're trying to conflate this. That is, if you don't get behind this, then you are supporting rape. Because you're not okay, here's what and they conflate this, because if you're not supportive of the sex strike, and if you're not supportive of going against the Georgia abortion bill, then you are not for the sexual choices of women. And if that is the case, then that means you would endorse rape. And that's a really slippery slope. But that's the slippery slope we get on Twitter these days. It's really easy to go.
By the way, on the video streaming we're doing right now, people are saying they're not seeing me.
Yeah, I just switched you over. I'm sorry about that. Right. Because I switched over to me when you were off for a second. So you're back. Right. You're back on right now. All right.
That was it. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but they put complaints on it. So
yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
They said they want to see my lovely head. Well, here it is. There you go. Enjoy it.
Well, so anyways, I'm just gonna say is that I think that this is a glaring transactional sex example. But what's even more interesting is she is kind of like ironically confirming that sex for women is prostitution.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been joking about that. I think what was the thing that that Michelle Malkin said?
Michelle Malkin said, "What if there was a sex strike and nobody came?" And she goes, "Oh wait, that's the whole point." Ba-boom. But this thing is going to have zero impact on guys like you and me.
Oh, it'll be gone next week.
All of the women that are doing this too, by the way, you take a look at the women. They're one of three things. They're older, they're uglier, or they're fat. In some cases, they got the trifecta. There's not young chicks out there on Twitter or Instagram jumping on this going, "Oh, you go girl, you go girl."
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting to see how that they will conflate this to meaning that you don't support the sexual choices of women. And every time we talk about abortion, I always say this, is that abortion is the ultimate expression of hypergamy. And people are going to raise their hands and go, "Oh my God, he's talking about hypergamy again."
It is the highest sacrament in their church.
Yes. And I think that people just presume that abortion is, well, first of all, like she's saying here, our reproductive rights. Well, okay, but first of all, it's not necessarily a right. But let's just say, for sake of argument, it is. Why does that exist? Why do women fight tooth and nail for abortion rights? What are the choices that a woman makes that with those choices? Like, we're supposed to, okay, we're going to support your choices. Well, first of all, we need to understand that men have absolutely zero authority when it comes to a woman's sexual choices, unless he is a rapist, which is exactly why they're trying to conflate this.
Or when the baby, if she decides to have the baby, you officially are on the hook for the next 18 years. You don't have any decision.
You have zero reproductive rights.
There was a test case. Was it up in Canada? Because you told me about this a couple of weeks ago, where a guy, and it probably won't survive in the courts, was challenging it. Look, I got financial skin in the game here. I don't want to have the baby. I want the child aborted.
Yeah.
There was some sort of a court challenge on that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is if a woman decides, remember, it's her body, her choice. That's been a thing since
not
the
her
70s.
body. I mean, it's like all these people skipped, biology. Just
I understand that, but you have to figure out what is the rationale that they're using here. It's because when you pick it apart, you can find out that there's actually no rationale. It is simply women, again, trying to. Ever since the sexual revolution, just like you were saying before, we have a rise in abortions. We have a rise. Women have the capacity to have safe and legal abortions. They fight tooth and nail for it all the way up to 2019. Ever since Roe versus Wade, 43% of children are born out of wedlock. Now we have the Duluth model of feminism that says that all men are the aggressors and women are always the victims. We have child support laws. We have divorce laws. All of these things that have gone into place ever since then, and pretty much women have reproductive rights. Men have no reproductive rights, because once a woman becomes pregnant, anytime she decides to have that baby or she decides to abort that baby, the man is irrelevant in that equation. And any woman watching this who wants to say, well, men are the reason for, men are the 100% the cause of all unwanted pregnancies. Well, thank you for the sex education, Miss Prim and Proper. But the thing is once the baby is in the womb, men are not part of that equation. And anybody who wants to challenge me on that, you will lose. You will lose.
Why doesn't a woman have the response? It's her body, right? Why isn't the woman responsible for the birth control then? And seeing that she doesn't become pregnant, how does that get dumped on the guy?
Yeah.
How does that get dumped on the guy?
Well, and then how do we know that the guy isn't a victim of birth fraud? We've talked about this before, how I believe that we need to expand the definition or the terminology when it comes to cuckoldry. So if a guy is proactively cuckolded or he's retroactively cuckolded, it's still a woman's reproductive choices that are superseding a man's reproductive choices.
Nothing got under people's skin at the Patriarch convention like that comment about especially if you've married a single mom, or even if you've adopted children. There was a guy that came up to us, and his wife did not have kids out of wedlock. I found out afterwards when we were talking to him. But he said he made an argument which was sort of interesting. Okay, so if we don't rescue them, if we as the patriarchs, if we as the alphas don't rescue those kids, they're destined to just become more of the beta, the soy, the feminist imperative. Do we have a duty, a responsibility to step up to the plate and save those kids?
That got back to the theme of the talk that you and I had, which was multi-generational mentorship. I love the saying that Hunter came up with is I'm not just the son I'm not just the father to my son. I'm the father to my grandson and my great grandson too, because the choices that I make and the values that I instill at this particular time in life with my son is going to be passed, hopefully be passed, if you're doing it right, gets passed down to the next generation. So you're looking at a long-term thing. Does that apply to mentorship? I would say so. Maybe not to the same degree unless you're, adopting or you have, a long-term influence on a kid. But
one of the coolest things I saw at the Patriarch convention, there was a black gentleman there. His name escapes me right now. He was a big guy, but he had his 14-year-old son with him. I just thought that was so cool because he's not only talking the talk, but he's walking the walk as well. He's got his son there. He's got his son there because he wants to give his son a heads up. This is what you're going to be encountering before his son gets out there and becomes sexually active. So he knows how the game's played.
Yeah, and that's necessary. Yep. So do we have a duty? Do we have some sort of imperative for that? Yeah, I think so. But here's the thing: is now we are aware of that. I think that it's kind of a shock to the system for a lot of guys for me to say, like, if you married a single mother and you have children in the house that you are fathering who are not your own, I would call that cuckoldry, but I would only call that cuckoldry in the most literal sense because that was a woman's reproductive choices
that you're paying for,
superseding your reproductive choices. Her choices were made. The responsibilities that you have for kids that are not your own, that choice was not made by you unless you adopted. Unless you said, you know what, I can't have kids, I want to adopt a kid. Okay. Yeah, at least you're I would not call that cuckoldry because you know the game before you get into it. And
well, even making that choice. Even with a single mom, and going by the traditional definition, a woman who had a child out of wedlock, okay, you have to know going into that relationship that the best you're ever going to do is you're going to be number two because that kid will always come before you. You're going to be number two, and if you have additional kids, I don't know, it could move down to 3, 4, 5. Yeah,
and I see red pill imperative. Yeah, this is savior schema. Yeah, that's exactly. I wrote a chapter about that in the book.
Right.
It's guys who think that the way to a woman's intimacy is by forgiving those choices and being, that we make those guys into superheroes. But I don't again, judge you. And I don't judge you, but I understand the mechanics that happen before that. Her sexual strategy supersedes yours. Her sexual choices supersedes yours. So most women, like Allyssa Milano, would say that's right. Women should be able to do that, but understand the mechanics, understand what's going on there. Women are the other thing I talk about is how abortion is eugenics. If she's aborting a child and she's keeping another child, what is the decision? What's the process that goes into making those decisions for a woman? When and I have, this is a really good one. I should have put this in the description. I have a really good post called Children of Men. And it goes into how even if you are not the father, a woman can put your name on a birth certificate. And as long as you're not challenging it, if you're naive enough to say, oh, she would never cheat on me, you're the father. Whoever's married usually is the father. That's why we're seeing all these cases with the DNA test, the 23andMe thing. And it's turning out that these the children aren't actually their own, who they've been raising for 20 some odd years now. And then suddenly it hits them like, oh, she actually was like, there's nothing he could do. And there's no way it's actually illegal for the doctors to inform you that, hey, you're not actually the biological father here.
So here in Oklahoma, we had a story, and I don't know if I brought it up with you, but up until just recently, and I think it goes into effect November 1st, it's retroactive. If you were listed as dad on the birth certificate and you did not challenge it legally within the first 2 years of the child's birth, it didn't matter. Even if biologically you weren't the kid's dad, you were on the hook until the age of 18.
Oh yeah.
Now there was a dad, and in fact, our news station, News on 6, the TV station that is part of the group that owns this, Griffin, did a story on that, and they just passed legislation that goes into effect November 1st that changes that. There's no deadline on it anymore. It can be at any time. If you can prove you're not the dad, with the DNA test, then you're off the hook. But up until just recently, you had 2 years, and if you didn't get your name cleared off of that, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I also saw that, and you and I talked about this, I think. I don't know if it was on your show or wherever, but there was the incident with a woman who had gone to a fertility clinic, and they were going to do some sort of artificial insemination to her, but the couple split up, but they still had samples of the guy's sperm, and he tried to take it to court and said, no, I don't want her using my sperm.
Right.
And the court settled and said, no, you can use his sperm, and he will also be on the hook for the support of that child. Yeah, basically his biologic, or his DNA, his genetics are in a test tube somewhere, and a female judge says, no, that's okay, because you have a right to have a kid. That's your reproductive. A woman's reproductive choices supersedes a man's reproductive choice.
The best one you had a couple of weeks ago is we had the 37-year-old teacher that was having sex with a 13-year-old male student. Had he gotten her pregnant, despite the fact that it's considered statutory rape here in Oklahoma, that kid would have been on the hook for child support.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's something that's definitely a red pill truth. The guys need to understand that a woman's sexual choice is legally a woman's sexual strategy will always supersede a man's stress.
Let me jump in here real quick. I want people to listen to what you've been saying here, because societally we're told that guys are selfish, that women are selfless. Women take care of kids and everybody else. Listen to what Rollo's saying today. It's the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 180 from what we've been, indoctrinated into or taught since the time we were little kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's not to say that, the women can't be nurturing and they're not good mothers or anything like that. Of course they are. Of course they can be. But from a legalistic sense, women have more rights than men. They simply have more reproductive rights than men do. And if you want I can show you example after example of how that works.
Well, when she says they want, what else do you want, Alyssa? What else do you want that you don't already have?
Right.
I mean, the system's rigged in your favor.
Right. And then guys will, and I'm just to let everybody know, I'm saving up all of the super chats here. We will get to them towards the end of the show here. But I do want to read this one really quick. Thanks, Jason of Wales, for this one. He said, I forced my girlfriend into an abortion when she was 23. I lost my mind from guilt. Any advice on how to get my head around this? Well, I mean, that was the situation. I wanted to read that one out there, because that is the first thing that women will say. Well, men try to, convince us and talk us into it. I mean, even Lycus says that. Like Lycus has the Hail Mary pass, where it's, take her down to the abortion clinic, get the abortion done, buy her a cheeseburger at Wendy's and never talk to her again, because you basically dodged a bullet. I get why he says that. I do think that men still need to be responsible for the children that they produce. But once that child is produced, I think that's the real seriousness here needs to be, that once you have impregnated that woman, everything is against you. Your wishes don't make any difference. So if you can convince a woman to say, hey, you know what, we're both not ready for this. I know you're 23. We're both going in different directions. We want to, we don't need a kid right now, maybe later, or whatever, the yada, yada, yada. And
I could never do something like that.
I couldn't either. I'm happy to say I've never been responsible for anyone deciding to have an abortion.
Right.
But I get this a lot, because women will say, well, it's men who are, men who want the abortions. It's men who want that to happen. And I'm like, well, I understand that. And I'm not going to argue with that. I think that guy, especially in this case,
there is a component to that. There's
a component to that.
There's guys out there that will go out, they won't use any type of protection. They'll knock girls up left and right, and have them get abortions. It's so they can use them over and over and over again. And that's, those aren't good guys. Those aren't red pill guys. Those are
I know people, personally, who have been responsible for they have been, let's say, influential in abortion, because at the end of the day, if a woman doesn't want to have an abortion, she's not going to have the abortion. And because there is a base of support for women socially, financially, politically, for her to have the kid when she wants to and flush the kid when she doesn't want to.
And there's no stigma associated with having a kid.
There's absolutely no stigma anymore about
it's stylish, it's fashionable, right?
If anything, it's reinforced. And today's Mother's Day, and I would fully expect that there's probably guys listening to this or who just got out of church and they listen to how women are, untouchable and they're the next level before God. Yeah, go ahead.
So I went to church today, and it's like ever since meeting you, reading the Rational Male, and just having my eyes open, nothing's the same anymore. But you're absolutely positively right. Now, Mother's Day, everybody stand up. We're going to get a flower. We're going to say wonderful, beautiful things. It's the hardest job in the world, Mm-hmm. Now, you watch a couple weeks down the road when it's Father's Day. It's not going to be the same. No flowers for Daddy, but you're going to get a lecture. You're going to be shamed in. You need to be a better dad. You need to step up to the plate. You need to do more to help around the house. Mm-hmm. It's like two different animals that they're talking about, completely different animals.
Yeah, that's because the feminine imperative owns most major religions right now in some way, shape, or form, and to greater or lesser degrees. And I have learned that from writing this fourth book. People say, well, what about orthodoxy? Okay, fine. But the orthodoxy is something that's like way above. And I will say this right now is that most orthodox versions of major religions right now will be starved for oxygen.
By they're still chipping away at those too. They're still trying
exactly. And they're chipping away at those. But I always bring this up around Mother's Day and then again on Father's Day, because on Father's Day you will have the sermon that says, "Oh man, you need to man up," or you need to man up and do better, and or it's an apologetics. I had a pastor about 2 years ago it was a really, really sneaky Father's Day one. It was he didn't address it to women, but it was the way he was presented was definitely presented to women. And it was saying that, fathers will fail you. Fathers will be abusive. Fathers will be non-existent. Fathers will be all of these really negative aspects of fathers. And then he turns it around saying, but your Father in heaven is not like that. So just really the moral of the story, or the message of the story was men are evil, bastards, but your Father in heaven is not anything like that. So just because you had a bad father doesn't mean that, you shouldn't believe in God. Really, essentially, that's what it was. But it was a really sneaky way of talking about that. Because in the beginning, you kind of go, oh, okay, he's kind of like talking about fathers, but he was really kind of working it in. And I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out if it was like a template sermon, because there's a lot of templates.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
So I didn't, that's kind of a sidetrack there, but just understand this. Remember that when you get into a position where the woman has become pregnant, if you've read any of my books, what is it, Iron Rule number 4? No, 5 or 6. I can't remember that. God, I'm getting so bad here. But always control the birth. Always wrap the rascal. Always be in control of the birth control. And if there's only one way to do that, and that's using a condom, then that's what you're going to have to do. If you're going to engage in sex, I will always say, always use protected sex. I don't care what the circumstances are. I don't care how long she's been on the pill. In fact, you can even say, you know what, I'm not going to ever have sex with you without a condom, so you can go off the pill for as long as you stay with me, because I'm just always going to use it. And that'll sort of put a strain on the relationship, I would imagine. But guys need to be as in control of the birthing process as is humanly possible.
Right.
Because then you're going to get women like that Mormon chick who was saying that men are 100% responsible for all unwanted pregnancies, because without the men, there couldn't be a pregnancy, right? Okay, fine. But it's actually more like 50% responsible, and the woman is 50% responsible. And I mean, as far as the conception is concerned, once a pregnancy happens, it's all on the woman.
Do you want to do any more on the sex strike? Can we move on to?
Well, I just to tie that up, because we kind of need to get to some of these here. Just to tie that up real quick is understand that when this conversation happens, if you're seeing something like this on Twitter, when you see people sort of piling on, understand that the reason that women are so adamant about keeping abortion safe and legal is because it ensures their sexual strategy is the predominant one in society right now.
Allows them to control the narrative.
It allows them to control the narrative, but it also allows them to control the process.
Right.
So because what happens is, I've written actually 3 posts on the existential fears. Okay, women's existential fear is that she might get tricked, her hypergamy might get tricked into thinking that a guy who is alpha is actually beta. A guy who is beta and he runs. That's why women hate games so much. They hate pickup artists so much, because it is a direct confrontation, a direct challenge to their hypergamous filters to figure out is that guy actually somebody who he says he actually is. Because if that happens, then she's stuck with a guy who is a fraud. He's not actually and in fact they're also trying to put on the books right now legislation that says if you have sex with a woman by saying like, hey, I'm a doctor or I'm an attorney or something like that, and she has sex with you under false pretenses, that qualifies as rape, because otherwise she would not give him consent. So that's really what that is it's saying that if you're teaching game, or if you're using game, or if you in any way misrepresent yourself as anything other than 100% what you are to get to sex with that woman, but pretty much like eliminate the entire dating process.
Oh, wait. We can turn that around too, because how many guys get married thinking that they're going to have limitless sex, endless sex, only to find out that they're in a sexless marriage. I don't know for the life of me how legally that is not breach of contract.
Yeah, well, it is from a.
This is not the deal I signed up for.
Yeah, it is. But we don't. Again, you don't. As a man, you don't have any reproductive rights. You have no. Her reproductive strategy supersedes yours, and that's why we see legislation like this, and that's why women will fight for safe and legal abortions, because they want the insurance to say that I want to have sex with a guy who is who he says he is, and I want to have his kids. And even if he doesn't want to have them, I'm going to have them anyways, because I have a right to have a child. I have a right to have babies. And there's a million different forms of social and political infrastructure.
They have the ability. They have the biological
right.
But
they think that exactly. But they think that they have a right. In fact, even Allyssa Milano uses that word, the right to her reproductive rights, her reproductive choices. So that's really what it comes down to. It's not so much a right to an abortion. It's a right.
She can't reproduce without a man.
Oh, I get that. I understand the mechanics of that, but I want to just finish up here and say, like, there's a reason why they will fight tooth and nail for a safe abortion, and that's because they want a right to reproductive choices, and they want their choices to be respected and funded, irrespective of any man's wishes, irrespective of anything else that goes in there. In fact, that's why we have the birth rate, out of wedlock birth rate being what it is, because we reinforce that. But when
safe abortion, that's an oxymoron. How safe can it be when you've got 2 that go in, but only 1 comes out?
Right. And I get that. I know all of the jingoism that goes along with that. Okay, I get that. But when a woman makes a bad hypergamous choice, she wants to be able to be absolved of the responsibility of that choice, unless it was a good choice, and then she wants to make sure that man has no choice to yeah. So if it's a guy and she says, okay, this guy's got a lot of money, I'm gonna have his babies, I'm gonna say I'm on the pill and I'm actually gonna get pregnant, and he's gonna have to marry me. I mean, there are forums, there are online forums right now that are devoted to women talking together and colluding together and to find ways to get a guy to commit. And there is a black market right now for positive pregnancy tests. So you can go on certain forums and you can find a pregnancy test that is a positive, so that you can trick your boyfriend into thinking that you are pregnant so that he will commit to you. That's not illegal. That's not illegal whatsoever. But what is illegal is if a guy gives you an abortion drug, or if he gives you some sort of he tricks you by
he's a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah, he tells you a doctor or something like that. Or what is illegal is if a fertility clinic guy he is responsible for 40 some odd children.
49. That's unbelievable.
49 children. Like, that's illegal. But it's not illegal to trick a man into thinking that the baby is his. So. because we want to believe that, and this just finishes up, that we want to believe that we want to do everything that is in the best interest of the kids.
Sure.
Women, that's the cult of the child. Women see that and they use that as their ideological cover. So they say, well, you want what's best for the baby, right? It's not what's best for the baby. It's what's best for her. Because if it was what was best for the baby, their abortion will be illegal.
Absolutely.
All right, so, all right, I got a few more here.
Okay, so why women behave in certain ways. Friday, my local program, we did a great show about how men should react if you've got a woman that's yelling at you, screaming at you, berating you. We did the full a good chunk of the show on that, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to revisit nagging. We've talked a little bit about this before, but what should a guy's response be to nagging? I had a lady at work who told me, we nag you because we need help. I said, well, how's that working out for you? Now, I have very low tolerance for this. And I even suggesting something to me like twice puts me on edge. But if you nag me, if you want to guarantee that whatever it is you want, I want you to open the pool, I want you to do this or that. If you want to guarantee that it won't be done, go ahead and nag me, because you'll always get the opposite result. But some guys sit there and they let them rag on them all day long. So what should a guy do?
Okay. Well, first of all, the reason that women nag is it is a passive shit test. So let's clarify that right there. But the reason that women nag is because women primarily, when it comes to men in the long term, when they're looking for the balance between alpha seed and beta need, that beta need side of thing involves competency. The guy has to be competent. He should be thinking about these things before she needs to ask him whatsoever. So if he needs to do the plumbing or he needs to do something around the house of some sorts, he should already know to do that before she asks him. That's the part that this is the way women think. Okay, women think that, well, he should already know how to do that. If he was a competent man, he would have already fixed the sink. He would have already mowed the lawn. He would have already done whatever those, he would, if he was attentive and he listened to me more, then I wouldn't have to nag you if you would just go and do what you're supposed to, what I think you're supposed to do. And so what that is it's a competency test. It's designed to, and again, this is women's hindbrain that's doing this, because there's usually especially when it's nagging or if it's berating, because I want to make a distinction.
I want to get into that
because nagging is not necessarily berating. Okay. Berating is a woman's hindbrain saying, this guy is not the best I could do. This guy is going to get me killed, is what
you're no good. You always put the family last. You always think about yourself first, all that kind of stuff.
Right. So there's a definite distinction that needs to be made between those two. But like for nagging, I think that what you need to do, I hate to say, well, you need to go and talk to your wife and say, hey, I'm not going to do that if you constantly are riding my ass to do all this stuff. I do what I can, and that's what I'm going to do. And you can either take that or leave that. But it's important to, there's no easy answer for this other than like just walk away from it or don't. There's going to be a million. Okay, I'm just going to recognize this. There's going to be a million MGTOWs that are going to go, well, if you weren't married in the first place, then you wouldn't get nagged, right? Well,
so how do we avoid getting somebody doesn't just all of a sudden become a nag? Well, she had a child, now she's a nag. No, there's got to be signs. This is why I'm so with you on waiting until you're at least 30 to get married, because you need experience. You need to be able to discern. And we're back to that vetting process I talked about at the Patriarch convention. Why it's so important to look at that young lady's family, particularly her mom. How does her mom treat her dad? Because however she treats her dad, that's how you're going to get treated. Right. So if she's going to be a nagger, you might not see it from her when she's in her nice phase, trying to win you over, get that ring on. You're going to see it from mom, though.
Right. Yeah. Definitely gonna need to look in the family history. If mom is a nag, it's likely she's gonna be a nag. If dad's a weak beta, that is her model for masculinity, and so that's what she's going to be expecting from you. Or maybe the guy's like non-existent altogether. So there's usually a trust issue for trusting men to begin with. So I couldn't trust my dad, so I can't trust you to, pick up the kids from school when I need you to, or to, do things around that. I mean, what do women really nag guys about in the first place? I mean, that's the thing. Is it getting stuff done around the house?
Don't you think it's chores a lot?
I think chores is one thing. I think that women believe that women who nag tend to go into marriages thinking that they need to be the mother. Oh, he's just another mouth to feed. He's just another kid I have to take care of.
Guys out there are looking for mommy too.
Yeah, there are most definitely, particularly in in the beta male side. But there's women who will just simply nag just to nag, and you have to remember that. I think I don't want to say be super forceful, but you've got to at least get the message across and say, look, I'm not going to do what you want me to do if you keep presenting it to me like this. What do you want me to do? And take care of it and do whatever it is. But understand that most women are nagging not because there's something that needed to get done. It's up here. It's this. He's incompetent. I married an incompetent guy. Oh my God, he got past my hypergamous filters. I'm now married and I have children with a guy who is a burden to me. And that's where we're going to go with this for the berating part of it, is when a woman realizes that she married you under false pretenses, or she got together with you in the long term under false pretenses. Now, that may or may not be true, but it's what her hindbrain perceives when she looks at you. She says, oh, I could do so much better than this guy. I should get away from this guy while I'm not 40 yet, and I still have my looks, and I can still find somebody better. Right. That's why you get the divorce porn thing going, because that's the reason divorce porn, which is like the eat, pray, love type movies and those things. The reason that narrative is so popular is because it plays on the insecurities women have when it comes to their hypergamy. And the hypergamy, once again, is based on doubt. Is he the best that I can do? Right. And if the answer that her hindbrain is giving her is, yeah, I could do that, then the nagging starts, because she wants to confirm that. She wants to say, okay, yeah, really, he is inept. He is incompetent. And I want you. So when a woman is berating you and attacking you, usually there's something a little bit deeper there. Maybe she's BPD or whatever, but
they will only do what they think you will tolerate. So in other words, if you've got a wife, a chick that is nagging you all the time, it's because you've sent signals to her that you're going to tolerate that. If she's talking, the one that's a killer for me is when somebody, like if she gets together with the mother-in-law or some of her friends, she's talking shit about you. To me, hey, the door's right there. Don't let it hit you on the way out.
I'm glad we were talking about this, and I hope the guy's watching, because this morning I was made aware of a guy whose story was something to the effect that he was with some girl. I don't know if it was his wife. I don't think it was his wife. I think it might be his girlfriend, but somebody he was living with. And she was physically holding him back and digging her nails into his neck, saying, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, saying, I don't care if I kill you. I'm going to go get a knife.
Right.
And so what does he do? How, if he lays a finger on her, she knows that the cops will, because of the Duluth model of feminism, that the cops will take him away to jail and not her. So he has to stay there and get. So that's a real quandary, because when you're talking about what is it that what you will put up with and what you won't put up with, well, if you won't put up with it and you defend yourself, you're going to jail. Yeah. So maybe you're the kind of guy that says, I don't care if I go to jail, I'm going to defend myself. Then maybe that's something that you need to think about. But like this guy that I was talking to, tried to remove himself from the situation. He did what everybody tells you to do, which is remove. Just simply, if you want a technique, just get out, just go away and say, look,
it's your wife that she's jacking you up against the wall.
Yeah, exactly. And the guy said, the guy looked like he had some body weight to him, so he got away from it. But he went and called the cops, and he didn't want to call the cops, but he did. And Lord only knows what the story was that she gave him, but because the state is trained in the Duluth model of feminism, it's always the woman is the victim and the man is the aggressor. And I think increasingly that becomes it's a pre-knowledge. It's like women understand that.
Like with me, okay, if there was an incident like that, the cops are automatically going to assume that I'm the aggressor.
Right.
But it's profiling based on how I look.
Yeah. They don't know what your mental state is, and they don't care what it is, because the state says just remove the man, just get the man out of the situation, and that resolves it. Because of I'm not saying there's not such a thing as domestic violence, but you know, when it's the opposite, when it's the woman who is emotionally abused, most women are. I think they say that, like, when, what was it the MRAs say? They say something like there's the domestic violence is actually 50-50. We just don't hear about it or don't talk about it because it's, you know, disgraceful or whatever for a man to get beat up by a chick, and or it goes unreported because those men know that if they call the cops, that they're the ones that are going to most likely go to jail because of the altercation of whatever is going on between the two of them. And then, of course, I always say, you know, the safest bet is to just remove yourself from the situation. Well, what if there's kids involved? What, you know, there's a lot that goes along with that. I really wish I had a concrete answer for you other than just get the hell out. And
we need to do a show on let's stay together for the sake of the kids, because I could do a couple hours on that. I want to talk about the berating though, okay? And I think Friday in the program, I said I've got a line. I've never regretted not saying something. Okay, I consider myself the what's the guy's name? What was the American sniper's name? Chris Kyle. I'm the Chris Kyle of linguistic kill shots. I could literally destroy somebody with my words. Okay, and I'm conscious of that. I know it. I know the power of it. So I've held back stuff in the past. Okay, not only in relationships but work situations, things like that. Women, on the other hand, when they get pissed off and the excuse is, oh, I lost my cool, I lost my temper, they can say some of the most mean, nasty, hurtful things you could possibly think of, and we're supposed to let it just roll off us, okay? And you know, saying I'm sorry, maybe if you get that from them, maybe some makeup sex, and we're just supposed to move on. But it doesn't work the same way on the other side.
No, and it never will, because remember, men and women are different. We process emotions differently as well. Women will sandbag stuff that you wouldn't even think is you would have moved on and don't even remember, and she's going to bring that up in a fight.
Stamp book. Let's get out the stamp book.
Yeah, exactly. Sandbag, or stamp collecting. Yes. But I want to go a little bit further than that, because that's it's one thing to get into a fight with a woman, and I got into quite a few fights with the BPD girl that I was with, and I hate to use her as an example, because that was like seriously, clinically, psychologically a disorder with this person. But again, she uses that. Women are very adept when it comes to emotional.
She would make it look like everything was your fault, though. She'd turn it around on you, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. And it was a constant thing. So after a while, you live in fear as, oh, are we going to get in a fight? Oh, we better avoid this situation. Right? I used to think, well, if we go see this movie, or if we go to that party, or if we go to this occasion or whatever, how is that going to trigger her, you know, her wanting to fight or wanting to argue about stuff, because, you know, because she's psychotic, right? And so you get in, you kind of like, you're this frightened dog, you're frightened that you're going to get the stick kind of thing. And so guys will, you know, anything can become normal. And I think that in this case, men, like you were just saying before, if you are in a situation where a woman is constantly berating you, you need to get out. You need to say, you know what, and most guys won't do this. Because most alpha guys will just say, you know what, I'm done, I'm out, screw it, I don't want to deal with you. But if it is of course most guys are betas, if they get into a situation where they're in an abusive relationship where the woman is berating him all the time, most of those guys won't get out of that relationship, you know, unless that woman is really somebody that is, you know, that they feel that they could do better than. Because most guys have a savior schema. Most guys have a scarcity mentality, and so they'll put up with that, or they'll think that, well, if I would just change, or if it was just the problem is me, if I gave up all my hobbies, she'd love me. You know, if I molded myself to be more of her ideal, she wouldn't have to berate me all the time. And so you get into this really kind of abusive, codependent cycle of changing yourself to appeal to her so that the beatings stop. And these guys who are in those situations, I mean, it's weird. It's weird to say. It's weird for me to talk about this right now, because I've been in those situations before. But as a third party guy, you go, just get out, just leave, just be done with it. But when you're in it, you're thinking, well, you know, I'll never find a girl as good as her, or I'll never, you know, or God forbid, we have a kid together. But get out. that is a sign that you need to leave, because and here's what will happen is once you do that, then it'll be sweet honey and oh, I'm sorry, come back to me.
Some guys justify it by saying, well, she only does it in private. She doesn't do it in front of other people or the kids. I'm telling you right now, if you got a wife that is ragging on you, belittling you, doing all sorts of stuff like that, especially in front of kids or friends, get out. There's not even a point in trying to waste any time to revive this or bring it back. It's dead. Just move on. Better time spent finding somebody new than wasting time on something like that.
Yeah,
just get out.
Most guys are afraid to do that because they are serial monogamists. They don't have anything else going for them, and they think that it's better to try to make it work with her. That's one of the reasons that I came up with Iron Rule of Tomasi number 7, which is never root through garbage once you've taken it to the curb. Never try to reinstate an old dead relationship, because it's never what you thought it was. The reason I created that as a law is because guys will go back and do that because it's their sure thing. They'll go, well, we both kind of changed now, and things are a little bit better between the two of us. And it's like this not even negotiating with her, but negotiating with himself to accept a less than optimal situation. It's like they don't realize that once they get to be about 35, 36 years old, they're going to be in the prime sexual selection years of their lives, but they don't care about that because for whatever reason, I mean, there's a lot of things that can go on in a guy's head. Maybe he's a promise keeper. Maybe he didn't want to be like his old man. My dad was a bastard and I don't want to be a bastard too. So I'm going to see it out to the end no matter what, or I'm going to stay in this abusive relationship for the kid's sake. Those kind of things, or I'm religious and divorce is not an option. Those kinds of things. Get out. That's the easiest solution to that problem is get out. Because I'll tell you what was really crazy to me is when I got out of the BPD relationship that I was in, she berated me all the time. Okay. She was genuinely clinically psychotic. But once I got out of that relationship and I was away from it for about like 2 or 3 months, and I started dating and I started going out again, I'm like, holy shit, women are actually kind of cool. Women are the women I'm dating right now. I'm getting back into my old alpha mindset again. And I'm dating non-exclusively, and it's okay for me to spin plates, and it's okay for me to, because you have to really convince yourself that it's okay to be about you, to be about your own mental point of origin. And when guys are berated and they stay in that situation, it's because they are not their own mental point of origin. She is. How can I make this bitch happy? That's what it is.
Not only in relationships, marriages, boyfriend, girlfriend kind of stuff. I've even seen it in business. I'm in the radio business, okay, and it's not with the company I'm with now, but in the sales department. I remember there was a guy that worked with me. Big old ox, played college football. He was smart. He was a great salesperson. He's like 300 pounds plus at 6'3", right? And you got this little female office manager who's like 5'5", general sales manager, just lighting into him, F this, F that. And I'm there like, dude, why are you even sitting there taking this? You wouldn't take that from me out on the street. But he's in that situation, he's allowing her to just, and other people at work here too. So not only is he being put down by her, but he's being put down in front of everybody.
Right. And that's what I tell these guys all the time when they just run me up the flagpole for saying somebody like Brad Pitt is actually beta, right? Or like their favorite MMA fighter is very beta. Well, he can't be. He's an MMA fighter, man. He could kick your ass in a heartbeat, man. He'd run the floor with you. Okay, great. But then he's taking the same kind of abuse, like you were just saying, from his girlfriend, because that's where his head is at with women. He's never put those two things together. He's been conditioned.
I got a U.S. senator here in Oklahoma, former U.S. senator. Okay, one of an elite group, 100 people. Totally alpha when he was in politics. But by his own admission, he'd say, "When I come home, Mama's running the house." I mean, it's like you turn over the keys. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah. I had a buddy of mine who got taken to jail because he got into an altercation with one of his baby mamas, and she was drunk and she wanted to take the car and go somewhere. I don't even know what it was, but he snatched the keys away from her. And just him snatching the keys away from her was enough for the cops to take him to jail. So you'll see guys who are like these big burly dudes who understand that if they because the cops come to the door and they see a dude that looks like you, Pat, they're taking your ass to jail, man. They're not taking her to jail. They're taking you to jail because you look like you could do some real damage. So even if that's not the case, even if you didn't lay a finger on her or whatever, she has no marks on her whatsoever. It's her story against yours, and her story is always going to supersede yours. So, but my best advice for guys who are in that situation is get out and understand that once you do get out, it's so much different.
How do you avoid getting into it in the first place? What are the warning signs the guys should?
You know, I think that what are the warning signs? The first warning sign that you need to understand, you want to say, oh, well, watch out for our parents and stuff. Watch out for yourself, man. Watch out for what are you going, what would you put up with? Because when I was in my situation with my BPD ex, I was somebody who, like, you would not recognize me right now if you knew me back then. If you knew me in my mid 20s,
right,
when I was with her, I was completely different. And I was completely different from like the way I was like from the time I was like, say 19 until I was about 24. I was in my rock star years, and that's, you want to know where all those 40 notch count came from? It was right around between 17 and about 24 years old. A lot of those came, but because I was more focused on myself, and I had mental point of origin, but I just didn't realize that I was really just kind of like, I don't have anything to lose, so I'm just going to go for broke, and it paid off for me. And I learned how to use game, a game that would work for me. There was no such thing as game back then. It was just like, you just recognize it if you had it, kind of thing. And I was domain dependent on the clubs and the places that I would go and the kind of women that I would be with, but it worked. And I'd gotten to a point where I could literally have pretty much any chick that I wanted to, just if I just set my mind to it. I could probably go and sleep with a chick on I could get same night lays easy. But the thing is I hadn't killed the beta. I had not killed the blue pill person that I was. So when I ran into her, it was all of my old idealisms came out, and like, oh man, she was great. She had the exact look I loved. She was fun in bed, but she was crazy. But she was crazy in bed, and she was crazy out of bed. And the thing is when you get into an abusive relationship, whether it's BPD or it's not, when you get into those kinds of relationships, it's really about what you will take, and you don't know what you will take until you get into those relationships. So I can remember times where she would dig her nails into my forearms, and I'd be like, what the fuck is going on? Why, how am I sitting here with this? Am I in an abusive? Because you've always heard about stuff like this.
Yeah.
We're talking about this right now. And there's guys who haven't had an abusive relationship that are listening to this right now. They're going, God, how can you not see that? Well, when you're in it, you don't, it's not like, hey, I'm an abuser. If it was that easy, guys would avoid it. And they do avoid that, because we're teaching guys to look for these signs. Nobody's teaching anybody that back in the day. And usually the guys that get into these relationships, no one's taught them to look for those signs. So first of all, you have to see the signs, but you also have to understand about yourself. Are you your own mental point of origin? I like to encourage guys to up the alpha. Are you really who you say you are when it comes to women, or are you going to knuckle under to what a woman says because you're afraid to lose her? And I think you need to know more about yourself so you don't get into those situations. And you need to make yourself your mental point of origin above everything. And most guys won't do that. They won't give themselves permission to do that, because they've been trained since the time they were 5 years old to prioritize and defer to women. So when they get into that and a woman starts berating them, it sounds like, here I have a woman who I really care about. She's fun. We've had sex. Maybe we have a kid, whatever. And she's telling me that I need to change, or she's berating me because her hypergamy is saying, you're not the best that I could do. Oh, well, God, I guess I better figure out how to be the best I can be just for this chick. Well, you're already entered into this in a mentality that is not conducive to a healthy relationship, because you're willing to take that. That's what we were just talking about a minute ago. How much will you take? And she will push to see how much you will take. And in today's, and you will take it because she knows that if you call the cops, or if it, push comes to shove, you're going to jail.
She's constantly testing the limits. Also, you know, when I was talking about parenting, not only do children need and want boundaries, but your wife, your girlfriend, she wants you, because you talk about saying no. Yeah. And if you're constantly saying, if you're giving her everything she wants, if you're always saying yes, if you've never denied her anything, she has no respect for you because you're a pushover.
Right.
And you're telling her, I don't have any other options.
Yeah,
Aren't you?
You're telegraphing it is what you're doing. You're saying, I don't have any other options. I'm not a guy that other men want to be and other women want to have sex with. And once that is confirmed for a woman's hindbrain, that gives her free reign to berate you, to nag you, to whatever, because she knows, I got this guy. I can do whatever the hell I want to him, and he's going to have to take it. And what she's going to do is this, is because her hindbrain says this guy is incompetent. How can I make him more competent? I can't get away from him because I got a kid with him, or I can't get away from him because the Bible says I can't divorce him. So what's left? Well, I got to improve him. I got to make sure that he knows that he's supposed to do what I tell him to do. Right. And most guys enter into a relationship or enter into marriage thinking that to begin with. They think that, you know, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And he listens to his pastor saying, you know, if your wife isn't happy, that means God isn't happy with you. So you need to shape up. And if if your wife was pleased with you, then God would probably be pleased with you too. And that's a real mind fuck. So when you get into those things, we need to get to the.
I got one more before we get into this. I want to get into the questions.
Oh, we have a bonus too. So
okay, so yeah, all right. I want validation. We did not define validational sex. You tell me what it means to you. I'll tell you what it means to me.
Okay, validational sex to me is the kind of sex that a woman wants to have. It's the enthusiastic sex where she can't keep her hands off of you. She's having sex with you regardless of what your status is, what your how much money you have. Usually validational sex is really kind of raw, genuine, desired sex that she's having sex with you for her. And in that, she's having sex with you. She's having sex with you because and on some level of consciousness, she says, I really want to experience sex with this guy. And I'm happy to say I've experienced validational sex quite a bit in my life, but and I like when guys say, well, you got to have money, or you got to have status, or you got to have fame, or you got to have whatever. Like, man, the most
desire on both.
Yeah, exactly. The most and the most sex and the most frequent and the most intense sex I've had was when I had, you know, a pickup truck, a single bedroom, like a studio apartment in North Hollywood, and, you know, an amp and a guitar. That's all I ever had. And women were coming to my house to have sex with me because they wanted that sex. They weren't going to marry me, but they really wanted to have sex with me. It was never going to be like, well, can I turn this guy into a provider? That wasn't even on the table. And most of them understood that was the way it was going to be. And I was fine with that because I was 21, 22 years old, and I was happy as a pig in shit. So yeah, that's validational sex to me. Is it's the kind of sex that a woman wants to have, irrespective of what most guys will conflate as, well, you got to have power. You got to have, I didn't have any power. You know, it's the sex that women want to have with you. The transactional sex is the kind of sex that, like, they're kind of thinking about, like, it's sometimes transactional sex is like, what can I get from this guy? Did I get enough from this guy? And all of these, and when I talk about transactional versus validational sex, this goes back to like primatology. So when you have like the alpha male of the group, or the alpha male of that particular primate tribe, women will go seek him out when they're in estrus because they want to have sex with that guy. And then for the rest of the time, they're okay. They grant sexual access to beta males, but it's usually because they're offering them bananas, or they're watching the little apes, or they're picking nits off of them. They have some sort of like transactional value, resource value to those guys. And I know that sounds really raw and visceral, but that's simply how you want to know why Allyssa Milano is saying, stop having sex with these guys, because she understands the transactional nature of sex. But women also understand the validational side of sex as well. So when
right now. You can tell. Otherwise, she wouldn't be talking about shutting it down.
Yeah. And so, I mean, women understand the value of their agency, and they fear losing it. They fear, like, that's why they want to lock a guy down right around 30 years old, because they know that their sexual market value is decaying, and they've got to cash out of the casino before the casino closes.
All
so
right, it is 4:50 or 5:50.
Yeah, I know you got a hard stop, so we need to.
Let's get to the questions.
All right, we're gonna have to go rapid fire here. Let's do. Okay, what are your thoughts on NoFap, on the NoFap movement? Do you know what NoFap is? Okay, NoFap is this. Fapping is jerking off. Okay, it's guys who and there's various forums for this. Sometimes it's popular. I've seen it popular in the red pill stuff, but I've also seen it mostly.
That's holding onto your seed, that it gives you this.
Yeah, that it gives you, and a lot of people hit me up because I have a post called the pheromonal beta, and that's not like some permission for NoFap. I was just like saying, like, there are some behavioral cues of a guy who jerks off a lot, and there are the guy that doesn't, because an alpha guy doesn't have to jerk off because he knows he can get laid, and he knows that he's going to have a sexual partner, whereas guys who jerk off a lot are doing so because it's their means to sedation.
What are the behavioral clues that a chick will recognize for a guy that's whacking off a lot?
Well, okay. Because I know you got to get out of here. I would say just go read the pheromonal beta on my site, and
give me just an idea. Give me a clue that women would look for.
Well, okay. Did you ever see the movie something about Mary?
Yeah,
remember where the jizz, gel, whatever. One of the things that the guy says to one of the characters says to the other character, I can't remember the names right now. He says, you got to jerk off before you go on a date, because you'll seem needy, right? You'll seem like you're going out there with a loaded gun. You want to seem relaxed, because she'll be more into you if you're relaxed. And so you gotta rub one out before you go on a date. Well, I've always said that is bullshit, because God forbid a woman actually think that you might want to have sex with you. You're going on a date. I mean, what are the pretenses there that you want to get to intimacy with her? You wouldn't be going on a date if that wasn't the case. But what happens is when you don't do that, when you're not sedating yourself, one of the reasons for NoFap is really more about pornography than anything else, because pornography is a sedation for guys. It satisfies a need, like, and this is really Freudian. I understand that, but all energy is sexual. So if you're jerking off, then you're not as motivated to go out and do things so that you can reproduce, so you can prove yourself, so you can go perform for women. Right. And this is Freudian. Okay. I'm not saying this is not Thomasian. This is Freudian, that you won't go out. Like, one of the reasons we have, big cathedrals built to God is because we teach guys, we teach men and women, don't jerk off, don't play with yourself, because you need that angst, you need that sexual energy to convert it to go and do different things, to use that. Your sexual angst can be channeled into more productive, more artistic, more creative, or even destructive pursuits, because you're not sedating yourself with masturbation all the time. And so when the guy is saying, well, you'll be relaxed, well, that's a sign that if the guy's like, is relaxed and doesn't care about it, that is, I say that's shooting a guy and shooting yourself in the foot, because
that tension you should have is gone.
You need to, because the sexual tension is gone, and you're not as into it, or not as committed to trying to get that girl into bed, if you've already rubbed one out and you got oxytocin floating around in your system because you did that. So, and there are cues, there are behavioral cues. It will manifest in your attitude. It will manifest in how you are dealing with that woman. Some say, well, she needs to be comfortable. No, that's not it. She needs to be uncomfortable. Sex comes as a result of urgency and sexual tension. And if you're relaxed all the time, that tension is not there.
All right, let's move on to the
sending the wrong sign. So what's my thought on NoFap? My NoFap thoughts is, I understand the reasoning behind that, but don't think for a second that you're saving up testosterone, because it has nothing to do. Jerking off has nothing to do with testosterone, but I understand it. I just don't think it's 100% tenable. If it helps you, great, but don't think that there's anything wrong with jerking off. But If it helps you out, great. If not, whatever. Okay, the next one is women do have control over their bodies just like men do. What is a guy told? What if a guy told you, a guy told who isn't ready to have a child, he should have kept it in his pants? What do you tell somebody that says that? Well, if he wasn't ready to have a child, then you shouldn't have had sex in the first place. Well, that's the easy way out. That's the easy way out for abortion. Because what it is it's saying if you didn't want to have kids, then you shouldn't be having sex in the first place. And usually it comes from a very moralistic stance. But again, it's untenable. Women want to have sex just as much as guys. Well, not just as much, but they want to have sex, and men want to have sex. Men and women want to have sex. Okay, and just because men. If men and women are going to follow their reproductive imperatives, let's just say that. So once that has culminated in having sex, then the choice afterwards has nothing to do with the guy and has everything to do with the woman. It's just the way that we have, at least in Western societies. I should also point out that everything that I've talked about pretty much for this entire show, it applies to Western societies, obviously in Muslim societies, obviously in Eastern societies, in other cultures. These might not be 100% true. Obviously, there's where there's honor killings in certain cultures. So what those really point out to me is more about the mechanics rather than the actual, why would there be honor killings? Why would there be prearranged marriages? Those are the questions that I ask myself when we're talking about multicultural types of things. But well, you should have kept it in your pants. Okay, well, great. I didn't keep it in my pants.
Now
great. She didn't keep it. Well, you never say, well, why didn't you keep your legs closed? Right. You're already pregnant. Well, why didn't you? We don't, because
you'll get such backlash.
Yeah, you'll get backlash for that, and really all that is just an easy out for people. Well, you should have kept it in your pants. Okay, well, you should have kept your legs closed. That's what you say. I mean, because it's stupid, because it's after the fact rationalization. So
somebody wants to know what's the difference between blue pill and beta. What's the difference between their behavior? Any essays about that?
Blue pill. All I can say is just read the first book. I mean, there's
pretty much synonymous when we start talking about that. Somebody that's blue pill generally is beta, correct?
Yes, but they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. So you can have a guy who is alpha and still be blue pill, and you can have a guy who is red pill and still be beta. Yeah. So don't think that those two are mutually exclusive. In fact, I've said this before, is a blue pill alpha is one of the worst white knights you will ever meet. So those are not people say, well, I'm a red pill alpha. Well, you just because you have red pill awareness doesn't necessarily mean you're alpha or beta or whatever. If anybody wants to learn more about sociosexual hierarchies, Vox Day has a really great series called Voxversity, and he talks about sociosexual hierarchies, and he goes into a lot of the definitions of like what an alpha is, what a beta is, and he goes into some other definitions too, like sigma and deltas and omegas and gammas and stuff. And okay, fine. But if you want a good breakdown of that, I would suggest going and checking out Vox Day's Voxversity. What else do we hear?
Voxversity.
Yeah. Choices for men are based on logic. Choices for females are whatever feels right. And she always has plan B, plan C, blah, blah, blah. And the state. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Just to opine on that just a bit is check out, I've got a series of posts called Instinct, Emotion, and Reason. And the way I break it down is that men and women both have instincts. Okay, we have our innate instincts for that are part of our evolved mental firmware. Emotion is also a way of interpreting our surroundings. Instinct is another one, and then there's rationality and there's reason. For men, it usually goes instinct, reason, and then emotion. For women, it is instinct, emotion, and then reason. So if you want to read up on that a little bit more, go check out Instinct, Emotion, and Reason on The Rational Male. I forced my girl. Oh, we talked about that one already. Hi, would you please tell the difference between blue? Okay, we talked about that. Let's see. What specific materials are there for improving technical aspects of game, and where do I find them? Well, where can you go? You could go check out Mystery Method. Would, if you're a rank newbie, I would say look on YouTube and look up Mystery Method's old stuff from like 2006. That's some of the best material, like the most basic material, and it's free. So look up Mystery Method on YouTube. I would say I would suggest RSD, but RSD prior to 2014 is good stuff. RSD is Real Social Dynamics, same kind of crew, but that's like classic PUA stuff.
Let me jump in on the feelings thing here real quick.
Sure.
Got a guy, local listener, Jaron Jackson. He's a West Point graduate. He's 33 years old. I bring him on to talk about a lot of millennial-related issues. Did 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. He had a great quote this week that I think I put it up on Twitter. He says, millennials and Gen Z, they learn with their eyes and they think with their feelings. They learn with their eyes, they think with their feelings. Traditionally, it was women who thought with their feelings. The new guys, the younger guys, the millennials, the Gen Z, they have been, trained, really taught as defective females. They don't think like we do. They feel. That's how they do it. That's why people like AOC are so popular. Right?
Well, and then you were also, we've talked about this before with Dr. Everett Piper, where he was talking about, it's feels before reals. And we have systematically feminized our culture since the sexual revolution. So we teach men and we teach boys as if they're defective girls, but we also teach them to get in touch with their feminine side. And as a result of that, we think that boys, why do we call them defective girls? Well, because boys don't learn like girls and they don't emote like girls. They don't have the same emotional nature as girls. Men and women are different and they process emotions differently. It's actually part of our brain, our neurological structure, that we process those, and particularly negative emotions, differently. But what we have done is, because we have believed in the blank slate for so long, we've decided that the way that females process information, the way that females put feels before reals, is the correct way of doing it. Like, so we teach our boys, don't emote or emote more, but emote like a girl. And so what you do is when you teach boys that, they will compete with each other to out emote the other boy, right? Because we have a competitive nature, we have a deductive nature. The more that I'm alike to a girl, or the more I learn like a girl, or the more I emote like a girl, the better, the more I'm rewarded, the more it's reinforced for me. They'll pat me on the back and tell me I'm a good boy because I emote and I express myself like a girl. So they think that emotion and deferring to emotion before reason is good, because it's correct, because it's the way that a girl would do it.
All these guys rushing to the defense of Allyssa Milano.
Yes. Well, that's identification. That's identification game, which is, the more alike I am with a girl, the more women will like me, because I am on their side. I'm on team woman. And it's the sneaky bastards strategy, according to, I think it's God Sod. Or
by the way, with the sex strike, I don't know if you remember, but a while back, Roosh had a thing. He said, if all of the men in the world banded together and collectively refused to have sex with any woman weighing over 200 pounds, okay, he said you'd have the largest collective weight loss in the history of mankind.
Oh, yeah. Of course. We got one last one here. It says, it sounds like guys who are, and sorry, this is Facta Non Verbis. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for the super chats. It sounds like guys who are alpha in one situation, but beta at home, are dudes who are not really alphas. They hand over the keys to the home because pretending to be alpha at work is exhausting. Remember that just because a guy is driven at work does not necessarily mean he is the alpha at home. Guys who can be successful in one arena doesn't, like, I think the best illustration of this is this guys in the military. Guys will take incoming, like, live bullets will be shot at these guys, and they will act accordingly as to whatever their training is, and they will be very, very alpha and probably kill you in a certain context. But these are the same guys who will kill themselves because their wife left them when they returned home from deployment. So just because a guy seems alpha to you in one context does not necessarily mean the dude has an alpha way of thinking. Like, I look at people hate me for this, but like I use Elon Musk as a good example of this. The dude he's got a lot going for him. Obviously, he's making a lot of money. He's one of the richest guys in the world. He's putting, wants to put people on the moon or Mars or wherever. Good dude. But if you read the Rolling Stone interview with him, you can tell he is an abject beta when it comes to women. And so when I say Elon Musk is a beta, people lose their minds. Like, oh my gosh, he's so much better than you. Like, I'm attacking him. I'm like, no, I'm not attacking him. I'm analyzing him. I'm saying this is what he believes. And so don't think that there's some exclusivity. So if you are beta, you have to be blue pill, and if you're red pill, then you have to be alpha. No, those are mutually exclusive.
So that's pretty much a wrap there.
Last bonus question, right quick. People wanted to ask me about what's going on with Royce and Heartiste, and I talked about.
For those who don't know.
Okay, there are 3 R's of the manosphere. There's Roosh, Rollo, myself, and then there's Royce. He is the 3rd R. He had a very, probably the most well-known, well-trafficked blog in the manosphere, which is called Chateau Heartiste, and WordPress has decided to eliminate that blog. So we talked about
copy anywhere.
What's that?
Does he have a mirror site anywhere?
No, and people were saying it was foolish to have it on a free site anyways, and yes, but up until now, the thing that concerns me the most isn't so much like whether or not that site needed to be taken down or not, because a lot of it turned into like ethno-nationalism and globo homo, whatever, I don't even know, because back before, like when I first started my writing, I was familiar with Roosh and with Royce, and we were all pretty good friends back then. And Royce had his blog, and I think he started in 2006. I'm pretty sure it was 2006. And a lot of his stuff was all game based. And so we were all comparing notes, and we were all writing and such. And that's why people call us the 3 R's. But right around 2009, he got doxxed. Yeah. And after that, I think because he had a government job of some sorts, and he was worried about losing his job because he had this blog. And so he ended up selling off the blog, or he was just going to shit can the blog. But then some people, I guess some other bloggers came up to him and wanted to buy the blog because it was very well trafficked. I mean, it's a huge site. I mean, the traffic was crazy, right. Particularly for a free, WordPress site. And once that transaction happened, and once he'd handed it over, people are saying that he might have been one of 3 other writers or 4 other writers, but there was multiple writers that came in and they pretended to be Royce, right. But the nature of the blog changed, and it became way racial and very political and very religious, and I can understand why they would have been red flagged by, like, say, the SPLC or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that's right or that's wrong, but the censorship is real, and that site right there, it changed from being something that, like, I was happy to be associated with prior to 2009 to becoming something that I haven't ever since like 2010 I haven't really paid much attention to Heartiste when it turned into Chateau Heartiste.
That applies to our conversation we had during the 3rd Red Man group that we did down in Orlando for the Patriarch. Mm-hmm. People in the red pill community, people especially like yourself, myself, we've got to be careful who we associate with,
right?
Because there's people that bring a lot of negative baggage with them that I know I don't, and I know you don't.
Well, then that was one of the reasons why my blog was very popular with guys, because I stayed true to the old school stuff that I was doing. It's always been about intersexual dynamics, and it always will be. That's not to say that I won't talk about race or politics or whatever, right. But only if it crosses over into intersexual dynamics. So I'm never going to talk about the same stuff like, say, Tim Pool is going to talk about, or Roosh is going to talk about when it comes to politics or religion or any of the tradcon stuff, whatever. I don't talk about that. I only talk about intersexual dynamics, and I've stayed true to that. But there's a lot of leeway involved in that. But the whole thing that kind of rattled my cage was that I'm on a WordPress or WordPress site myself. Don't worry, I have contingency plans just in case, but this is evidence I think that this is evidence of a larger push to purge, like, people like Paul Joseph Watson, Laura Loomer, all the stuff that's happened with Facebook and their purge. I think that to see WordPress enter into this is a new development that we need to be aware of. And I should also say that all of this stuff that I'm seeing happen right now is exactly what I said was going to happen back in October at the State of the Manosphere address that I gave at the 21 convention last year. So this is it, man. There's a storm coming, and we need to be prepared for this storm. And you're right. We need to be careful who we associate with, because my concern is getting the truth out to people. I want to make sure that this show and that my blog stays true to their form. And if I go down, it's not because I was associating with somebody else. It's because that the same people who wanted to, silence Royce are trying to silence me, but they can't call me. They're not going to call me a ethno-nationalist or whatever. They're not going to call me any of that, because I've never talked about that, and I never will talk about that, because that's not my wheelhouse. I
got to bail. Great show. Talk to you Friday. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. See ya.